Yes.
So the claim I'm responding to is that logging and deforestation is an extremely harmful practice. While nobody denies that deforestation is harmful, it's the effects that were overstated by the advocate that I have a problem with. The claims were that logging and deforestation is a big part of environmental destruction. 2, that a lot of potential cures, remedies, and biodiversity will be lost from deforestation. And 3, deforestation has many negative long-term effects. For the first claim, logging and deforestation being a big part of environmental destruction, again, it's not very controversial, but it's also very overstated, and it's not as harmful to the environment as stated using the figures that the advocate presented. The supports A included scientists are predicting that rainforests will be lost in as little as 100 years. B, rainforests are limited term resources and cannot be recovered. And C, deforestation rates are rapid. According to the Wildlife Fund, 36 football fields of trees are lost every minute. Now, my response to points A and B is that neither scientist nor study was cited, so finding the information itself and the methodology used to gather is unknown, so I couldn't really find any flaws with it because I couldn't actually find the thing. And also, one thing not mentioned is the significant increase in secondary forests. And according to Joseph Wright of the University of Minnesota in an article published in The Economist, a significant amount of forest land is actually growing back over previously logged lands and areas that are no longer inhabited due to slow population growth and increased migration to cities. And in response to supports B and C, the Farming and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, deforestation rates have decreased over 50%, as well as forest land increasing by 110 hectares since the 1990s. This includes the secondary forests. The claim 2, potential cures, remedies, and biodiversity being lost. My responses are that it's no controversy that land and biodiversity is being lost, but these are not actually very significant. Support A was that potential cures, remedies are lost, and then support B is that up to 28,000 species will be lost in the next 25 years. My response to support A is that using the argument that potential cures are being lost is using an appeal to ignorance argument. And in the same vein, you could make a silly argument like a deadly epidemic may exist in the rainforest, and the only way to get rid of it is to use deforestation. So neither of those can really hold any merit. And in response to support B, it's not cited where these figures came from, that 28,000 species will be lost, so I couldn't really figure that out. But there's no controversy in that. But according to an article published by the University of Kent, recent logging techniques called reduced impact logging that are being widely adopted have very little effect on wildlife and the ecology of the forest, and there's current studies going on to see if there's any real impact on loss of biodiversity using these techniques. That's currently inconclusive, but it's currently ongoing. And claim 3 is that deforestation has many negative long-term impacts. Now, this is true, but the data used to reach these conclusions is outdated, and it's not as bad as it was stated. And one support was that deforestation is a huge contributor to global warming, and it has a significantly larger carbon emission than all automobiles combined. The information was not cited, but previously a World Wildlife Fund citation was used, so I found that they are saying that 30% of all carbon emissions are from deforestation. However, due to a study published 2 years ago by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in their 5th assessment report, reported that only 11% of all carbon emissions are from deforestation, a significant decrease from a decade-old figure used by the World Wildlife Fund. And for these reasons, I don't think that logging and deforestation is as harmful as the advocate had said.
All right, structurally, everything's easy to follow. I appreciate that. The argument that your counterclaim seems to be... Your counterclaim seems to be that the advocate's argument is overstated. You're not denying that this occurs, but you're suggesting that the impact has largely been overstated, and I thought that that was a reasonable approach to take. Nobody's saying that deforestation is a good thing, but the question about how bad a thing it is, I think, is minimized, especially, for instance, on that last point when you're talking about the long-term impact on global warming. I think you've got a good piece of information that suggests that it's much lower than it was once thought to be. On the, I like the piece of evidence that you had on that first point that talked about how the secondary forests are actually replacing a lot of this and providing a minimal impact to deforestation, and that there's a study on this particular point to suggest that this might be a way to continue to reutilize those resources and have a minimal impact. I think that that's, in the debates that we're getting ready to do, that would be an example of a nice inherency argument that could easily be developed into a response to minimize the need for any particular change. On the second point, I think your analysis is explained pretty well. It's pretty speculative. It's appeal to ignorance. You use kind of a hypothetical example to reverse the argument. I understand the point that you're taking there, especially if there's an absence of any example from the advocate of diseases that have been cured by any of these species of plants or animals that we've found, that once existed. That seems like it's a pretty wild assumption that's being made there. And then the long-term impact, like I said, I thought that you had good evidence response here that suggests this less significant than it once was thought to be. So without essentially denying that there is an impact of deforestation, which there isn't any argument on, I think you minimize the impact, which is where the argument happens to be. All right, thank you.